All right, my nerdy compatriots, welcome back to another Unity devlog tutorial thingamajigger. Today, we are going to be working on magic. And I was going to show you a little bit of a oversight that I made when we were doing the health bar. Because I realized once this little health bar boy goes all the way down to 0, like when we run into this sword over and over, in a Souls-like, which is the genre we're going for, our player would die. And, we'd respawn really far away, and it would be really hard to get back. But, as you can see, our health bar runs out and nothing happens. So really quick, before we get into the whole magic part of the episode, I'm going to show you how to make a death function. So, first thing we do is we go into our prefab and into the HUD. Actually, lying I did. We go into the parent controller, parent object, and find the player health and stuff script. You saw nothing. Once we have the player health and stuff script open, we go to the function taking damage, taking health damage, I believe is what it was called. All right, it's opened up. We have a whole bunch of extra stuff that opens up at the same time as well. I'm just going to exit out of all those because I think it'll make this go slower to leave them open. At the very bottom, we can make a new void. We're just going to call it void death. And for now, we don't have any respawn or spawning in mechanics set up. So when we die, all we're going to do is do a debug. Debug dot log you died, get good. All right. And then we have to figure out when to call this void. So we scroll up, and where it says take damage right here, what we're going to do is we're going to do we're going to stay inside of isInvents condition. Excuse me. And we're going to make another check. So if parentheses health is less than or equal to actually we already have that check up here. So if health is less than, and I'm going to say equal to 0, then we die. So we do death. Now, when we go back into our main scene and the scripts finish reloading, we can hit play, fall to our not death apparently, and walk into the sword a bunch so that we take damage. And let me open the console window so that we can actually see a debug if it were to show up. So taking the damage, taking damage, taking damage, and eventually you died, get good. And that is how you set up a death function script thing. So normally you'd have that hooked up to like a respawn thing or a death screen window, but we're not going to worry about that today. Today, We are worried about magic. So, what I'm going to show you is three things. We got three goals for today. We are going to make a magic shader. So whenever we summon a magical object, it's going to have this magical shader. And then we're going to make a magical particle system. So let's say, like in Elden Ring, when you do a spell, it shows a sigil before the spell actually gets cast. We're going to do something similar so that when the player is fighting something, or when the player is about to do something that involves magic, the sigil will appear, or the particle system that we're going to make. And that will indicate that there's about to be a spell cast. So, what do we do first? You might be wondering. I'm going to do the thing that I think's the most fun, which is making a shader graph. This shader graph is something that's unique to Universal Render Pipeline. I don't know if you can import it into other pipelines, but yeah. So, what do? We do... You know what? I lied. First thing I'm going to show you. This magic script right here. So it's been a while since I've even looked at this script. So I'm going to take you through the process, the thought process of finding an unfamiliar script and making it work. So let me go over what I already know about it. Somewhere down here on the ground, I'm supposed to have an anvil. Let's get rid of that. Okay. So, this bad boy right here. And this is an interactable object. And I'll show you how to make an interactable object, probably in a later tutorial, so keep your eyes peeled for that. We run over to this bad boy, interact with it, and here in the middle there's an engrave spell button. And the way this basically works is I have magical words. And I take a word and it splats it on here. And right now the controls are pretty simple. Oh, I got too far away. Engrave spell. And the way this works is as you add more words and you make them like if I made this word 3 a child of word 6, then what would happen is word 6 would activate, and then it would search its children, find word 3, and activate it. And it does this recursively, and whatever particular pieces of code are attached to each object gets executed. And then the script is also, these words are attached to like a sword or something. So the idea is you engrave a magical spell onto a weapon, and then you can activate it. You can use that spell. Oh, that's weird. That's a glitch. We're going to have to fix that later. Anyway, let's take a look at what's going on inside of this script exactly. So we have the test magical script, and we have an array, aura, and body. So if we go look at our player really fast, you'll see it has a bunch of these crazy objects, these yellow and blue things all around it. Those are different points that are all here in the aura and body transform. Then we have game object, target finder thing. So also, I remember now, in this script, we have the magic stuff, and then all this stuff at the very top is all for target locking, which we're going to do target lock, I think, in a later video. Right now, we're mostly concerned with just magic stuff. So, right now, we have player equals game object, current mana equals current mana minus MBD. So it looks like when I made this script, I already made like a mana bar or like mana cost and stuff, which is fine. Excuse me. We're just gonna transfer all this to our player health and stuff script. But it doesn't look like there's really anything in here that will be helpful to us. Okay, but it looks like MBD is supposed to be the sum of all the components in the spell. So if you remember what I was talking about, all of those words would be a component. All right, so which means we have to figure out a way to count the number of components in a spell, the number of those words. So the more complex the spell is, the higher the cost would be, which I guess is pretty simple. So where do we find all of those? And it looks like this doesn't ever get used. There's 0 references to this, so this void doesn't do anything right now. Okay, that's for targeting. Okay, we're missing a script. What this tells me is that there isn't enough information in this script alone to do all of the magical controls. So somewhere we have another script that's in charge of magic. And now we get to find that script. So I'm going to go to the prefab of my player object, and I'm going to look around in the UI. Oh, here we go. Spell build library. Let's see what this is. Okay, this is what we're looking for. This is the script that controls the number of spells, or controls the spells that are all on that anvil. And the way I can tell that is because when I come down here, there's a couple of ways I could tell that actually, or a couple of ways I could have figured that out. If we go into our character and come to our canvas and to our UI parent, this UI parent contains all of the UI controlling stuff that I've made previously. There is a spell anvil thing right here. And right now and it's talking about anvils, and the only anvil I have in the game is that one over there, which means these two are probably linked, and I kind of just remember. Okay, so what we're looking for is something that will count the number of components of words on the spell anvil. So And I don't think it's going to be that simple either now that I'm thinking about this. Um, Actually, it might just be that simple. We are going to shrink this down and kind of look at each part one at a time. So we have library setup, we have set up the objects and spells, and then we have compiling stuff. And I think what we're going to want is the compiling stuff. Also, let's see if we just have the list spells and spell words and spell details. Words on anvil. Prefab. Okay. We want to find something that for each loop like this, for each transform T in spell anvil. If T get component word controller is not equal to null, list one, add T. Okay. And then we have another thing that says compile one. Oh, and we have another for each transform in TTOA. We have get component equals temp. Then we do it twice for each transform T and TTOA. Again, okay, aside from my sloppy code, what we want simply is this right here, list one, because I believe list one will make a okay. So all this down here is something I was making in preparation for saving and loading specific spells that you make. So we can kind of ignore that for now. All we're looking for is the number of transforms in the spell anvil, I believe. So if, oh, yes, I understand now. Okay, because the way this worked, I believe, was every every transform or every word would be assigned a number, and then every word would then find the number of its parent, and that way you could then save which game object was a child of which other game object. So this particular script piece of code right here would assign an ID to each of the game objects within this within the spell. And then later on you could find the ID of its parent, and then when you're remaking the spell, when you click a button that says load spell number 5 or something like that, it would automatically know where to put all of the spells when the computer was remaking them. Anyway, but for our purposes, we only want the number of words. So, to be honest, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think we even need to use that particular piece of code that we just found. All we need to do is make a new void. So void count spell? Count words. Or maybe calculate cost? I don't know. My gut is telling me that that is not the right thing to do. Let's poke around for a little bit more. Um, hmm. Whatever. Okay, we have words in spell details. Whatever. This isn't really the main focus of the video, so we're just gonna kind of breeze on past it. I'm just gonna do what works for now, and then we can come back when we're gonna do the actual scripting in more detail. Right now, I think this video is going to be focused more on making the particle systems and implementing them. So all we need to do then is say for each transform t and spell anvil, we just say, we just make an integer, int number of words, not make that a no parentheses there. And then down here, we simply say, just come down here and say number of words plus plus. Okay, and that'll give us the number of words. And we can make that public. I'm going to make that public so that when we use the spell, which I believe is what this does, player equals game object, Caravana. When we use the spell, then we're going to want to activate the piece of code that I just made, which now that I'm thinking about it, we are going to want that piece of code separate from where we just put it. So public number of words, I'm going to control F to find where I just put that, because we don't actually want it there, because this particular section is for compiling and getting the details of the words that are on the anvil. But we want to do this when we are actually using the spell. So we are simply going to come up here. We're going to find our last missing script that I know we're missing. Because, let me show you how we're going to do this. Each of the word objects should have a script attached to them. So we're going to run over to this spell, engrave, and add a random word. And I believe if we then go to our scene, go into 2D mode, remember how to actually move, and then we select that bad boy. I think word item prefab. We have a word item controller. And I don't think this is actually what we're looking for. Let's go into prefabs. Magic. Okay, this is something. Base linear. So this is the base controlling object. Go into this. Here we go. This is what we're looking for. So this script base, I believe, every spell will have this script attached to it, which means we are going to find the whatchamacallit. In here somewhere, this script it should have a reference, first off, should have a reference to our spell build library or our test magic script. But it looks like it does not. Okay, we're not going to delete anything. We're not going to mess with anything. We're looking for something that counts the number of spells that it's dealing with. Or, how do I explain what's going on here? Okay. We have a use function. So, the way the magic system works in this game, the player doesn't necessarily have to trigger it directly by pressing a button. The player can have it set so that their spell will activate when the other player attacks them. So, like how AIs can do input reading, well, now the player can also do input reading. That's the idea, at least. But that always starts with the trigger script, and right now this is the base script. But the base script should always happen at some point. We have a reference to the player. So player equals transform.root. Okay. Make a list thing. Pieces equals get component children. For each execute blah, blah. For each okay, and then these are all this is going down the list of the types of the different spells objects, and then it executes them in a certain order. Okay, I think this is kind of all we need right here, because if I'm correct, this pieces equals get component in children's spell pieces. Geez, this is a little bit more complicated than I remember. Pieces equals get component children spell pieces SO. This would only this wouldn't work for some reason. This doesn't work, I bet. Okay. Well, let's make a workaround. We're not going to try and figure this all out right now. So what we'll do instead is in the player health and stuff. We're simply going to go to the very bottom and make a public transform, and we'll call this spell anvil, because I suspect that when we create our spells, they're going to be regenerated on the spell anvil. So all we need to do is, when that happens, we need to calculate the cost when the spells actually get used. So, which is why we came to this. Let's see if there's a use function. So, use equals, okay, this is what we're looking for, the use function. We're going to want a reference to our player health and stuff thing, which means we're going to go into the awake method. Actually, I lied. We're going to go to the top. And we're going to make a reference. So, player health and stuff Faz. Okie dokie. And then we're going to go to the awake. And underneath where it says player equals get component transform.root, we're going to put Faz equals player dot get component. What are we looking for? The player health and stuff. Player health and stuff. Bada bing, bada boom. All right. Now we can go to the use function. And the use function, the use function is what, gets used whenever the spell gets used, which means we can simply put everything, we can put the trigger for the void that we're about to make right here. Public void. Oh, nope, no. We don't need to make a new one. What we're going to do is we're going to go to our take magic damage. And instead of having an integer needing to be passed in, we're going to set the integer damage. We're going to make a new integer within this. So int damage is going to equal 0 for now. And then we are going to what are we going to do next? The damage is equal to 0 for now, which we need to change. The damage needs to equal the number of things, the number of transforms. Oh, no it doesn't. That's not quite right. Okay. Well, either way, here we're going to do our take damage function. So, Faz take magic damage. Oh, look at this. Add and subtract mana. Check that out. So, oh, hey, look at that. I was smart. It looks like I've already implemented a system that adds and subtracts mana for us. So we just have to integrate that into our thing. So look at that, guys. I lied to you all again. This is what it's like to like deal with scripts that other people have made or you made a while ago. It's ugly at first, but it'll save time in the long run. All right. So in a add and subtract mana, let's go to the definition. All right. Add and subtract mana, executable pieces. Game component children mana finder. If my TMS dot current mana plus equals mana change. Let's see, what's my TMS? Test magic script. Test magic script dot current mana. Oh, look at that. So we just added and subtracted it directly. Okay, so I believe. How did I get this reference? My TMS. Where is that coming from? Because what we want to do is we simply want to switch this from the test magic script to the player health and stuff script. Which means we have to figure out how it is referencing this. Can I go to the definition? Oh, I see. I see. Okay, this makes more sense now. So because the not the test magic script, the add and subtract mana inherits from executable pieces, that means, which is over here, it has access to all of these variables that I believe, whoa, Control Z that, all of these variables are set up in each of the things in each of the executable pieces via the base script, which is not what it looks like. Okay, whatever. It doesn't matter how it gets the variables. The point is it has them. Which means now what we want to do is, I think the smarter way of doing this is to actually is to keep everything the same here. And, well, okay, we have a couple of choices. For this guy, he already has a reference to the test magic script, which is right here. And it's already adjusting the mana in that script. So we could, in theory, add another reference to our test magic, to our add and subtract mana, and we could like substitute it, but the reason why I don't want to do that is this code is messy. And there are little reliances. So reliance is everywhere on my TMS, and it already has everything set up for if we have a failure in our magic. So I think the smarter thing to do, but the slightly less efficient thing to do, would be to adjust this right here to say something. We're going to adjust this. Okay, right now what this is doing is it is going to our test magic script, and then it's directly changing the variable current mana right here. It's directly changing that, which we don't necessarily want it to do. We want it to do something more like what we have set up over here. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this right here, this script, and put it over here in the test magic script. Paste that bad boy in. And we're going to just say take magic damage 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to say something. R is what pirates say. We're going to adjust our current mana right there. Oh, what is this? We're going to adjust these. I'm going to put them at the bottom so I can find them easier next time. We're going to adjust these via script rather than adjusting them directly. So we have, what does this do? Current mana equals current mana minus. Okay, if I'm correct, I don't think we need that. I doubt we're going to need this whole thing right there. But we're going to need to get our, okay, current mana. This is the equivalent of magic, our magic variable up here, our integer for magic, which is right here, which means we are going to want to change, we're going to want the current mana and our magic thing to equal each other at all the time. So I believe all we need to do is reference Faz again. We're going to go player, health and stuff, and Faz. That's what we're calling it. And we do not need Faz anywhere else. We do not need it in the executable. We don't need it in add, subtract mana. We don't even need it in the base. You can just delete it. And we just don't need it anywhere anymore. We just need it in the test magic script. So, and then in take magic damage, int damage, we are going to subtract from current mana. Okay, so current mana equals current mana minus damage. Okay, and then we say faz and then we say take damage, take magic damage, and once again we pass in damage. Which, it is kind of silly to do it like this, but when you're working with unfamiliar scripts, you kind of have to do weird, ugly workarounds like this. And then, to make sure these things are synced, we're going to sync them in the start method, which I believe I just passed right here. We say current mana is going to equal to faz dot. What are we calling it? We are calling it max mana, max magic. And if you're a beginner and you've made it this far, little tip here. The left side of the equal sign is always the thing that you're changing. So I want to change current mana to match max magic. So you always put what you want to change on the left, and you put what you're changing it to on the right. And I think that's going to be all we need to do. Yeah. We'll come back to magic in a later episode, but I think we're going to actually split this up into a 2-episode thing. This first episode can be for the weird script and the health fix, and then the second episode can be for making particle systems and stuff. And it looks like I left it in play mode. That is no bueno. So, save everything you have. And if you made it this far, would you consider subscribing, please? And I will see you all very shortly.